Britain. There is always a certain moisture in the scenery of this country. Wet cobblestones, clouded skies, heavy gray clouds, old buildings, polished leather shoes, quiet pubs. When you walk through London, you begin to notice that this city does not boast about being new. In fact, it does the opposite. It lets old things remain old. And yet, it continues to captivate people from all over the world. The monarchy, tailoring, universities, theaters, museums, and the subtle presence of class in the air. Britain is not a country frozen in the past. If anything, it feels like a country that moves forward while remaining old. Today, that is the structure we want to explore. Why is Britain able to sell the future while remaining an old nation?
It is a compelling question. Most countries, when they speak about the future, try to shed what is old. But Britain is slightly different. This country does not dispose of its history. It preserves it. And more than that, it transforms it into present value. The monarchy, architecture, culture, universities, none of these survive merely as preserved relics. They still function today as the foundation of national branding and public trust. In that sense, Britain is a country that treats tradition not as nostalgia, but as an asset.
The first impression Britain gives is, after all, that it is old. But that does not simply mean its buildings are old. Its way of presenting time feels old. Its way of shaping behavior feels old. The atmosphere itself seems wrapped in a long history. It is not flashy, and yet it feels strangely powerful. A quiet hotel, slightly dim lighting, stone-built universities, gardens that are not overly manicured. Everything seems built not on a power that demands attention, but on a power that exists as if it were simply natural.
Yes, and I think that is precisely Britain's defining trait. This is a country that is very good at suggesting authority, rather than displaying it too openly. The monarchy, universities, parliament, architecture, suits, none of them need to loudly declare, "We have power." Instead, they carry persuasion simply by being there, as if naturally. So Britain's oldness is not merely about the past. It is also a staging of trust.
That makes sense. A kind of understated authority. Britain rarely over-explains its greatness, and perhaps that is exactly why it feels so strong. In an age when so many cities compete through visible newness, Britain seems to turn accumulated time itself into value.
Exactly. And what is fascinating is that this oldness does not stand in the way of progress. In many places, the old and the new tend to clash. But in Britain, old architecture, old institutions, old rituals, they often stand on the side of supporting present value. That is what makes it so distinctive.
When speaking about Britain, there is one word that cannot really be avoided: class. In Japan, the word can sound a little heavy. But when you watch British films or feel the air of its cities, you can sense a kind of invisible hierarchy. The way people speak, their accent, their clothing, their schools, the places they live, their hobbies. Without anyone explaining anything, you somehow feel what kind of world a person belongs to.
Yes, that is very much still there. Of course, it is no longer the overt class system of the past, but Britain still retains very strong differences in cultural capital. It is not only about how much money one has. It is also about how one behaves, how one speaks, what one considers natural. These invisible things quietly signal a person's social position.
So that is why patterns in clothing and interiors carry so much meaning in British films and dramas.
Exactly. Tweed, houndstooth, leather, wallpaper, gardens, these are not merely matters of taste. They also serve as signs of the kind of culture someone grew up in and the kind of order they belong to. In other words, in Britain, lifestyle itself becomes content. That is where its strength lies. The very details of society become the thickness of its culture.
That feels true. Elegance is not simply about taste. It also reveals the order a person belongs to, and perhaps what they have been taught to preserve. That is why British culture feels, in a sense, like a culture to be read. Meaning is embedded in the air itself, and those who can read it will see it.
Precisely. And that readable structure is part of what gives Britishness its power.
Britain is often called a country of culture. Music, literature, theater, film, fashion, design. But this cannot be fully explained simply by saying it is a country that likes the arts.
No, it cannot. Britain's strength lies in the fact that it has built culture as an extension of everyday life, and at the same time has treated it properly as industry. Theater, publishing, music, film, these were not regarded merely as hobbies. They were understood as fields with real international competitiveness. That means culture in Britain is not a luxury. It is a form of national soft power.
The power to attract becomes the power of the country itself. And yes, Britishness really does feel as though the atmosphere itself is being exported. The London way of life, British humor, British intelligence, British refinement. All of it is constantly being reinterpreted across the world.
And importantly, this is not just about exporting style. Culture creates trust. Trust attracts talent and investment, and that, in turn, strengthens culture even further. Because that cycle exists, Britain understands that preserving culture is directly tied to preserving national competitiveness.
So protecting culture is also an economic act. Old theaters, universities, museums, they are not simply heritage sites. They continue to draw people in and elevate the value of the city.
Exactly. And British culture is not strong simply because it is grand or spectacular. Its strength lies more in restraint, detail, silence, atmosphere. Those things are difficult to imitate fully, and that is why they remain powerful over time.
When thinking about Britain, London is impossible to ignore. It is the political center, the financial center, the cultural center, the educational center, the tourism center. Everything overlaps there. And yet, London never feels overly organized. If anything, it feels like contradictions remain intact.
That is exactly what makes London so interesting. London is a city that edits the world's many contexts together. Historic buildings stand beside skyscrapers. Royal culture exists near street culture. Finance, theater, and immigrant culture coexist within the same city. Things that might feel chaotic elsewhere become, in London, a kind of urban depth.
To leave contradictions side by side and somehow turn that into charm. Yes, that really does sound like London. It is not overly tidy, and yet it does not collapse. In fact, there is a kind of intelligence in that unevenness.
Yes, London is not a perfectly unified futuristic city. It is a city where new layers are placed on top of historical ones. That is why it becomes a miniature version of Britain itself. Tradition and innovation, class and diversity, conservatism and internationalism. It holds on to those contradictions without erasing them. That is where London's strength lies.
So London is not a city that narrows everything down to one answer. It is a city that somehow remains functional while carrying multiple contexts at once. Maybe that is the strength of an editorial city. There is one more thing that matters greatly in understanding Britain. It is, after all, a maritime nation, an island country, a country that prospered through ports, a country that built wealth through trade. That memory of being a sea power still seems to linger somewhere.
It does, very strongly. And what is interesting is that this maritime structure is now being restarted in a different form. The reorganization of ports, energy infrastructure, the regeneration of coastal regions, and offshore wind farms stretching across the sea. In other words, the sea remains, even now, a site of the future for Britain.
A country that once launched the Industrial Revolution through coal and steam is now trying to reorganize the next era through wind. That feels highly symbolic. Not just environmental policy, but the renewal of national structure itself.
Exactly. How to use the sea, how to transform ports, how to create regional employment, how to support national security. Britain's renewable energy and port strategies are not simply about being green. They are about renewing itself as a maritime nation.
So not the sea of empire in the past, but the sea as infrastructure for the future. That is where Britain's next form begins to appear. By now, it becomes clear that Britain is not simply a traditional country. It does not throw old things away. But that is not because it clings to the past. Rather, it understands how old things can still be used. The monarchy, architecture, culture, universities, cities, all of them remain connected to the present.
If I had to put it in one phrase, I would say Britain is a nation of editing. Rather than inventing the future from zero, it rearranges what has been accumulated, updates its meaning, and turns it into present value. That logic appears in its cities, its culture, and its institutions. Britain does not refuse to destroy old things because it is obsessed with the past. It keeps them because it knows they can become assets.
To see oldness not as cost, but as capital. That is Britain's intelligence.
I think so. And the important point is that things do not become assets simply by being preserved. Their meaning has to be updated. They have to be reconnected to the society of the present. So Britain's strength lies not in tradition itself, but in its ability to operate tradition.
When you look at Britain, it makes you rethink what the future actually means. Does the future mean making everything new? Does it mean cutting ties with the past? Britain seems to suggest otherwise. Inside old buildings, new debates take place. On top of old institutions, new industries emerge. From within old culture, new value is created. Britain is not a country that lives in the past. It is a country that walks into the future, bringing the past with it.
And that is not only a lesson for Britain. It is suggestive for every country. In the years ahead, the real question will not only be how new something is, it will be how a nation rereads what it already possesses, how it reconnects it, and how it turns it into value. In that sense, Britain teaches us something beyond the meaning of tradition. It teaches us what national editorial power really is.
Oldness is not delay. Only those nations that can transform oldness into an asset will quietly shape the future. Britain. Beneath its clouded skies, there may lie not mere nostalgia, but a remarkably strategic editorial intelligence. Thank you for joining us. This has been NEOTERRAIN. We will see you again next time as we continue to look at the hidden structures behind landscape.